Well, Jen Gerson, here we are once more. Took a week off. Great to be back. This is going to be a fun podcast video today because basically this is speed dating.
All right.
I have to get my kid to a hockey game. Your husband has been traveling for business this week, which means odds of your kids storming in are what, about 80%, 90?
80%. I'm going to give us 80%. In fact, probably
80%.
higher because one of them's right behind me.
Okay. Well, you and I quickly exchanged notes, stuff to talk about this week. We have 8 items on the agenda. Let me tackle 2 of them really
All right.
fast and just wipe
Go.
them right off the list.
Shoot.
Donald Trump indicted this week.
Yes. Right.
This,
Do I care? Do we care? We're Canadian.
I'm gonna say I care to this extent. This could go weird. I'm really interested to see how this goes because the indictment was announced late Thursday. We got through most of Friday, at least to the time we were recording this. The actual arraignment will be Tuesday. That's going to be a media circus. So that's going to be worth watching just because it could be insane. And in any case, it'll be historic. I don't have anything else to say about it. And it's not that I deny that it's huge. It's just we have to just kind of watch to see how it unfolds.
Well, no, but bluntly, we're a Canadian outlet like that focuses on Canadian content. It's not to say that we would never write about American stuff. Sometimes we do, but this is just not. It's not our circus, not our monkeys, right?
I don't wake up every morning thinking the Lines readers need to know my take on the latest U.S. story.
Right.
Even though we are about to talk about one in a minute. The other one, budget. So federal budget came out this week, and we're gonna get you the readers and the listeners some stuff on that eventually. But my reaction to the budget was that it was massively underwhelming, and I don't even mean that as a policy comment on what's in there. I mean, there's probably some good stuff, there's some bad stuff. We can go through it and quibble, blah blah blah. But what just jumped out at me is this was like what it looks like when you phone in a budget because you're on a deadline.
I don't have a huge amount to say about the budget that hasn't already been said by a million other people at this point because it's all pretty stock standard stuff. But it does feel like a end of government budget. We're tired. We're out of real vision and ideas. We're
survive another year.
We're gonna survive another year. We're gonna throw some stuff at some hypothetical climate change stuff that's not going to get spent or go anywhere, and we'll figure something out next year.
Yeah, basically just the idea that you have to say, yeah, you need a budget, so here's a budget. A couple of the branding things in it, like the HST rebate is now the grocery rebate, like that is please jug meat, love us. The only strategic takeaway I took from this budget is that there's not much in there. And the branding of it is to appeal to NDP support. So I think that like my read of this is that they're exhausted and are also tied down on a lot of other fronts right now. They just wanted to get the friggin' thing out of the way. So it's as quick a budget as they could do. Yep. And that brings us to actually one of the genuinely big stories. I didn't even know about this until you mentioned it. One of the things they're tied down with is the China electoral interference file. And you know this better than I do. Moments ago, Han Dong, as we're recording this, he released a press statement saying his attorneys have served Global News with a defamation lawsuit.
Now, you and I can both, we both have fairly jaded journalist instincts toward defamation lawsuits. You and I both are aware, intimately familiar with the fact that anyone can file a lawsuit. It doesn't mean anything. Yep. It doesn't prove anything. And the vast, vast majority of these lawsuits fizzle out well before we get to court.
Yep.
Either they end in settlement, which is very common. They end in apology, which is very common. Or the person pursuing them ends the pursuit. They just realize it's not worth the money and the expense. The other problem with libel is that it subjects both the recipient of the suit and the prosecutor of the suit to disclosure. And the idea that Han Dong is going to willingly subject himself to, disclosure directed by, Sam Cooper and the likes. I don't know. I just, I have my sneaking suspicion that this whole thing dies before it ever gets to the disclosure stage, which means Dong will file his statement of claim. Global will file their statement of defense. They'll go back and forth a little bit on it. And then my suspicion is that this is going to go away. But we'll see. I could be wrong. I do think that it might be worth doing a bit of a blurb that's a hypothetical defense of Han Dong. And I think this is sort of interesting. I think there are two things about this whole case that speak to the possibility of Han Dong's innocence. One is the fact that he's been accused of speaking to the Beijing consulate in Toronto and suggesting that they withhold the release of the two Michaels because it would benefit the Liberals. I mean, I wouldn't be the first person to point out the question of like, how would that have actually helped the Liberals? Does that necessarily absolve him? Well, no, because I mean, he might have been engaged in just bad political calculus, sure. But I do think that if we were to write a hypothetical innocent or defense of Han Dong, that point would have to be made. The other point that would have to be made is that you can't rule out that our intelligence services just mistranslated or got something wrong. I just don't think you can rule that out. There have been many people who have pointed out that, the Mandarin word for what delay and immediate sounds the same. And then many people, Mandarin speakers who have countered that particular liberal talking point by saying, well, no, they don't be ridiculous.
I asked a close personal friend who's from China and fluent Mandarin and Cantonese speaker, and their response to that idea was laughter.
Yeah, no. So that was a bad talking point, and that was the best talking point that the libs and their supporters could come up with, and that tells you that there's probably it's nonsense. But you know what? I haven't seen the transcript. I haven't heard the tape. I haven't seen it directly. So can you rule out that's someone from CSIS or someone from that wing screwed up? No, you can't. So yeah, I would, however, counter both of those defenses by saying that, Han Dong shouldn't have been speaking to the consulate about a sensitive matter such as the continued hostage situation without the consent or approval of the Prime Minister's office or Global Affairs Canada. Like, that was inappropriate of him. And he probably deserved to be booted for caucus for it. Just end dot, even if he said nothing wrong. So, I have my own theories, but that's fine. But I do think that it might be worthwhile to say, well, look, if I were to make the points in Han Dong's defense, these would be my points.
Yeah, I got an open mind to that. If you want to whip up a hypothetical defense of Dong, that's totally cool. I did find it interesting. So last week, I left the country. I'm like, I'm leaving the country. Please, no news scoops, while I'm down in Nevada in the warmth and the sunshine. And like immediately all this stuff breaks. So it's like, great. Coming back when Dong had said he was going to sue, and also when that concept of a translation error came out, it was really interesting to me to basically see a lot of people who I suspect should know better kind of going, aha, Global is doomed. Like Dong is finally in the fight. He's going to crush them. I am. Let's be very clear on this, lawyers of the world. I'm talking right to you here. I don't know the allegations are true. I haven't seen the documents. I haven't talked to the sources. Like, this is all me hypothetically spinning here. It is possible that Global is wrong and still doesn't lose a lawsuit on this if they can demonstrate they acted in good faith and with professionalism. I don't think people realize how strong defenses are for media in Canada when faced with defamation lawsuits. If they acted recklessly, if they acted maliciously, if they knowingly lied, then they're screwed. But even if they're wrong, they have legal defense so long as they acted appropriately here. Talk to some of my lawyer buddies about this, including some who know this area of law. This will probably be a SLAP defense, strategic lawsuit against public participation. That's a legal defense you can use in some Canadian jurisdictions to basically go, this is a nuisance lawsuit. It's intended to silence me, and it's an expedited path to get it shut down by the courts. And Global probably will be able to use that defense. I don't know if it'll work, but they can try. And then to your point, I
suspect a SLAP defense won't work here, because I genuinely don't think Dong's legal claim is invalid. I don't think that he is maliciously or strategically trying to shut Global down with a lawsuit.
No, but that'll be what the lawyers argue, and we'll see what happens. And then to your earlier point, even if this continues, there's a very good chance that it doesn't go beyond where it is now. The two other points I would add, one really quick, it's very possible that even as this process continues, Global keeps breaking stories about this guy.
Yes, of course.
And the other thing I would just mention is I find it very interesting because like I think all of us in the abstract understand why Dong is in a difficult situation here, right? Like anonymous sources are saying he did terrible things. One of the things I just said to a friend of mine, a liberal friend who was getting a little bit drunk on the sweet wine of Dong's imminent crushing of global was, let's say hypothetically, just 100% hypothetically, Dong challenges global. Global talks with their lawyers, they talk with their sources, and they decide to retract the suggestion that he said what he did about the Michaels, that he did indeed hypothetically say they should be released immediately. What Dong is left with as his defense is the conversation that our national security agencies were monitoring as part of their investigation into like illegal Chinese espionage in Canada that I am now a target of was misinterpreted by the translators. Like it's a technical win for Dong, but like it's not much of a win.
It still doesn't
here.
explain what the fuck he was doing there in the first place.
Do you remember when Patrick Brown like declared himself vindicated?
Yeah. I'm vindicated because actually she was 19 instead of 18.
Yeah, it's sort of like, aha, the woman who accused me of sexual misconduct was in fact 19 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't stop him from being elected mayor of Brampton. But anyway, that's kind of where my thoughts are. Even if this goes well for Dong, it has to go really well for him to come up with anything close to a victory. And even if he only does okay, he's still going to lose.
Well, and not only that, but he's still facing the risk of disclosure.
Yep.
And what the hell is going to come out during disclosure, right? I mean, that's always the fun. Who knows, right? So anyway,
you want to talk Alberta? You wrote a column this week.
Yeah, I wrote a column this week at your behest because I was going to only blurb this, and then you were like, "No, I think this is a good column." So this was just about the stuff that came out about Danielle Smith. For anybody who hasn't read the column already, this video came out of her having a just bizarre conversation with this street pastor named Arthur Pulowski, who was just a known provocateur, troll, gadfly.
Yep.
You know, has been in the news every 12 to 18 months about something every year since 2006. Okay. Like, you know, just classic, I insist on my constitutional right to blare my sermons at full blast in front of City Hall using an amplifier without a permit. Like he's that, and actually went to court mortgaged his house and went to court for 8 years in order to defend that constitutional right. I mean, and it's just been one thing after another. This guy consistently refuses to go for permit. Like he's just that dude.
What happened? Did he actually win the case?
I can't even remember. I know. I think he won and then it got appealed and then he lost.
Good use.
But like he's actually won a couple of court cases in the past. Like,
yeah, you grind these things out, you'll win a few.
Yeah, you'll win a few. So anyway, of course, when COVID happens, he became, you know, the full blown anti-mask, anti-vax. God, this is a test of God. Blah 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 blah. So he had a bunch of. He was one of the pastors who refused to shut down his street church. He continued to hold gatherings. He continued to hold congregations. So he was facing a bunch of charges for COVID-related offenses. In addition to that, he was accused of ironically violating the Critical Infrastructure Act that Jason Kenney passed when they were doing the Wet'suwet'en rail blockade protests. Yeah. So during the Coots border blockade, which everybody was like, "Oh, this will never be used against white people." It's like, "Oh, yeah, no, it was." But anyway, so during the Coots border blockade, Art Pulowski did his thing, went down, showed up, and just as they were trying to open the border, actually to let cows through the border so they wouldn't freeze to death and die. Art Pulowski gets in front of a soapbox and starts riling all of the allegedly riling all the protesters up, being like, "This is, you know, God's telling you to keep the border shut. Jesus saves." Anyway, that's a brief summary of the whole situation. So what the fuck Danielle Smith was ever doing talking to this dude? Like, what the fuck are you doing talking to this dude? To me, it's a classic Danielle Smithism where you just had poor judgment. Clearly someone was like pushing her to talk to this dude whom they felt was you know, core to a particular constituency that got her the leadership. What's bizarre about all this and where the judgment stuff comes in is like Art Pulowski is not a leader of thousands of people. Like this guy's deeply fringe. He has a congregation of a couple hundred people here. Like this is not This is someone he's actually very politically well connected, because of course he's been in charge in the middle of so many of these court cases, and he's gained supports and followers and weird connections as a result of that. And also he's fairly well known, but he's not politically powerful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
he's got no money. He's got no actual bodies.
So he's not like a political organizer. He can't bring out 800 volunteers.
No, exactly. Precisely. So anyway, the whole thing is like, it's very bizarre that she even would talk to him one-on-one. It's very weird political judgment for her to have done that. But anyway, so I wrote about all of that. I stand by all that. I think that it's very embarrassing for her in the province that this video came out. She doesn't look good. She looks weak, bluntly. But of course, one of the major problems, or one of the major allegations as a result of this, is this supports the idea that she is doing an SNC-Lavalin, that she's using her office to inappropriately put pressure on prosecutors to drop charges against people who have been charged with COVID-related offenses. This is not so clear to me from the video, and for a number of reasons that I've already gone into in my column. But as a result, I think of this story, I kind of have been asked, well, do you feel bad about the stuff that you wrote about some of the CBC's earlier reporting on this, where they've alleged that, Danielle Smith's been interfering with Crown prosecutors?
Can you just take a minute and recap what you did write about it? Because this was a big deal a couple of months ago.
Yeah. So basically the CBC broke these stories that suggested that Danielle Smith, somebody in her office, had been sending emails directly to Crown prosecutors, putting interference or pressure on them to drop COVID-related charges. And of course, this is something she kind of promised to do during her leadership campaign, some version of this. And she basically kind of said something to the effect of, yeah, I've been in touch with Crown prosecutors about this sort of stuff, which of course is inappropriate. It's prosecutors and the Attorney General do have prosecutorial discretion about when they pursue charges and when they chop charges, and this shouldn't be done for political reasons or political gain. So it is inappropriate for Danielle Smith or anyone from her office to be reaching out to Crown prosecutors to do that, or to be putting undue or inappropriate pressure on someone from her Attorney General office. But as we remember from the SNC scandal, there is a gray zone here, because the Attorney General is also the Justice Minister and is a member of her cabinet.
Yeah.
Just as, for example, Jody Wilson-Raybould was a member of Justice Trudeau's cabinet. So it isn't necessarily inappropriate for someone like the Premier to have a conversation with her Justice Minister or members of her Justice Minister's department and say, what about these COVID charges? Is this appropriate? Is it within the public interest that we continue to pursue this? Just so long as those questions don't cross the line into like, I want you to drop these charges. And it would, of course, be totally inappropriate for the Premier or anyone for her office to be reaching out to Crown prosecutors directly. Crown prosecutors are basically civil servants. Like, yeah. There's no reason for them to be making those kinds of conversations. Directives from the Attorney General should be coming from the Attorney General and no one else.
Well, not only is there no reason to do it, there's a lot of reasons not to do it.
There's a lot of reasons not to do it.
Yeah.
So if Danielle Smith, when the CBC came out with these articles, they had basically alleged that Crown prosecutors had been contacted directly. Just give me 1 second. I got to yell at my child. They had alleged that there was this email between someone from the Premier's office and a Crown prosecutor putting undue pressure or interference to get them to drop these COVID charges. And we, a couple of months ago, had written that the reporting on this was not where it needed to be, because essentially the CBC, by its own admission, hadn't seen that email. Just give me another second. I got to yell at my kid. He put the Roomba on. But anyway, so where was I? So
the CBC had reported on emails that hadn't seen.
Yeah. So, and this is where you and I kind of went like, you can't report on documents existing. Like, it's unwise to report on hearsay of documents existing. Like, yeah.
You might have just heard something I didn't. What just happened? Was there
Oh, my daughter's screaming in the background. You can't hear that?
No.
Okay. Elizabeth, please be quiet. Quiet for a few minutes. Okay, bud?
I promise you it does get easier.
Okay. But anyway, so the CBC reports on this, and we were a bit like, they didn't meet the reporting bar for this. You can't just, a source tells you that an email existed, but you've never seen the email. That's really flimsy, unless it's like multiple sources or, like that's really flimsy. So of course, when Danielle Smith, when this first came out, Danielle Smith in her office said that they scoured all of the emails between her office and the Crown Prosecutor's office and found no evidence of any of this emails. And so anyway, we basically pointed out, like, this is flimsy for an allegation of that nature. That's really flimsy stuff to go on. And chances are what Danielle Smith was intending to say, and what she later said she was meaning to say, is, I've been in contact with the members of my Justice Department. And she was kind of conflating prosecutors and Justice Department, which again is embarrassing and shitty of her, but like par for the course.
And that's what people were asking you. Hey, do you regret your earlier take on the CBC?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. And my point is, no, I still think that reporting on the allegation of an email or a document that you haven't seen based on no other sourcing is really weak. I think you are signing yourself up for some significant trouble by doing that. The other thing that I would say is, I don't think that this video, while it certainly could lean a reasonable person into this direction, I don't think this video that came out this week is slam dunk evidence that the premier is interfering inappropriately in cases. I think it certainly is embarrassing for her. I think the video was ill-advised and showed poor judgment. But there's two reasons why I'm not convinced that this is slam dunk proof that she's interfering. One is that in the video, she says something to the effect of, oh yeah, we've been talking weekly with our prosecutors about COVID-related cases. And the problem is that, again, she's consistently at that time period conflating prosecutors with just members of the Justice Department, and she had a history of doing it at that point. So is that what was she just talking off the top of her head? Was she blowing smoke up Art Pawlowski's ass? I don't know. And then the other thing that makes me not think that this is quite the slam dunk is that at the time that she had this call with Art Pawlowski, which was in January, Art Pawlowski, to my knowledge, had no outstanding COVID-related cases, which means he did have some outstanding cases related to the Coots border blockade, but there was no outstanding COVID-related cases, which means that Danielle Smith couldn't have been talking to Crown prosecutors about Art Pawlowski's COVID-related cases every week, because if she had been, she'd know there were no outstanding cases at that point. So, it's messy. It's a complicated story. But I mean, I think it might be worth a blurb that, I don't know, maybe this isn't worth a blurb. It's up to you. I can write a blurb if you want. But essentially, I still don't think that this is the slam dunk proof that.
No, I would write it. This is all interesting. I mean, the reason I liked your column, it's twofold. First of all, you and I were talking on the phone yesterday, and you were basically saying, this is all the breaking news stuff. Because I don't follow this stuff that closely. And I said to you, is this a big deal? And your original instinct was no. But the longer you talked about it, the more fired up you were getting. And I was just like, let's just hang up the phone and go write it.
Yeah, just go write it. Stop talking.
Don't blow all the steam off on the phone with me. Go put it in a column and we'll go make some money on it. And that's what you did. And people ended up loving the column. And I saw it circulated widely. So the other thing that I really liked about it was just, I follow the general politics of Alberta. So when you're saying that Smith has terrible judgment, yeah, I believe that. When you're saying that she doesn't understand the difference between a bureaucrat and a prosecutor and conflates the terms and gets herself in trouble, plausibly, yeah, I can believe that. But what I had no idea about was the backstory of the Pawlowski guy.
Yeah.
And when that was a missing piece that really made a lot of this snap into place with me. So if you want to follow up on that, I would say do that for sure. I think it would be worth reading. We have 3 items left on our list here.
We got to blow through them like crazy.
I've got like 6 minutes before I got to head off to the hockey.
All right, then do you want to just list them all first?
The Mass Casualty Commission has come out with its report. It is 3,000 pages long. It covers a lot of stuff. Gun control, it covers intimate partner violence. But the main attention seems to be on reform of the RCMP. The feds, in a normal circumstance, probably would have welcomed another club to use on the gun control front, given all the recent problems they've had on this. I don't know if they'll touch it again. Maybe, maybe not. I honestly don't know. I'm pretty confident this exhausted, burnt out, anti-deliverology government is not about to embark on structural reform of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. It's just
Agreed.
like,
Do we want to do a blurb, or should we just try and commission a column on this?
I would probably go commission a column.
Okay,
I think like
let's skip this for the dispatch though, because it's worth a column.
I'm gonna propose also we skip the Torstar part of the podcast just for
Sure.
time, but maybe
let's not pick on. I mean, I don't know if you want me to write a blurb on it, but let's not pick on Beethoven, the Toronto Star.
If you want to write a blurb on it, do it. The only item left on the list is the debacle in Nashville.
Oh my God. I literally described this as a pick your own trench of the culture war. That's what this terrible tragedy is.
So my understanding is someone who was, correct me if I'm wrong, born female, identified as male.
Mm-hmm. Trans.
I just didn't know what trans in which direction. I think born male, identified female.
No, born female, identified male.
Okay, born female, identified as male, attacked a Christian elementary school in Nashville. Yeah. We've been learning, as we always do, more about the shooter. We've been learning about mental health issues. We've been learning about a troubled background, troubled family situation.
Of course.
3 dead staff, 3 dead 9-year-olds. The body camera video of the police killing the shooter is available, and it's gripping. Kind of one of those things where I watched it once and I'm never going to watch it again. The point, I don't want to belabor the point. Like, this is the kind of nightmare scenario stuff that you and I and a lot of other people have been consistently worried about in the United States. You can only ramp the rhetoric up so high before someone does something like this. And now I'm wondering how long it'll be until at some trans rights events, or at a drag queen story hour or whatever it happens to be, how long until someone shows up and blows away a bunch of people and justifies it as retaliation for our murdered Christian babies.
I mean, the other problem in all of this is the thing that I think that you and I try to get across to people who are fighting culture war battles without being aware that they're fighting culture war battles, is that it's never one-sided.
Oh, you never win either.
You never win. The only answer is to retaliate and to escalate. That's the only path. That's the only direction this goes. So one of the big issues is there's been a lot of very appropriate scrutiny on the stuff that the far right's doing on trans issues. Their trans laws, they've had the book bannings. There's absolutely been that shit out there. It's been clearly over the top. It's obviously harmful and unnecessary. The use of groomers is back in fashion. I find that term to be totally inappropriate and homophobic. And at the same time, moral panics don't happen in a vacuum. Moral panics will happen when you've got two sides in highly extreme polarized situations feeding off one another. And to pretend that the trans activist side hasn't also been extremist is disingenuous, because for the last several years, you've had trans activists threatening to kill people, increasingly amping up highly amplified rhetoric, claiming they're being genocided, claiming that they're being, all kinds of things. And of course, in that kind of environment, you have people who are disturbed and mentally unwell using ideology to justify a push toward violence. I mean, that's how this happens. It happens whether you're an ISIS or you're a far right or you're a neo-Nazi or anything else. So, you have, in this case, a reactionary far right that has gone crazy on trans issues, that is reacting to an increasingly reactionary trans rights activist group, and they're feeding off of one another in a really vicious and nasty retaliatory cycle. And this particular narrative, you've got guns, you've got Christians, you've got children getting killed, you have trans activists, you have literally every element for a perfect culture war shit show, because no matter how you look at this story, depending on your priors, you're going to find what you're looking for. It's a real nasty case.
I know you can never be glib when you've got 3 dead 9-year-olds, but it's a perfect brew. It's like, this is like, if we distilled the culture war down into one incident, it would look
to one awful tragic incident.
It would look a lot like this. I mean, I say that fully mindful of the fact that now someone will probably go out and do something even more horrifying. But no, that I think you said it well. And I've always said culture wars are like nuclear wars. You can't win them, but you can destroy everything trying. And that's I don't know. It's again, I know I'm at a loss for words here, which isn't great on a podcast or a video, but
I mean,
like,
again, this is an American story. I don't want to
it's dead
necessarily over
kids.
belabor it, but it's dead kids. And I think that probably if we do a blurb and it'll just be like, look, obviously this is heartbreaking. This is literally both of our worst nightmares. I would die inside if anything happened to my little guys.
Two kids
So
for me, and my wife's a teacher. Like, this is literally
yeah,
my nightmare.
this is what keeps you up at night. But I do think there is something to be said about just the fact that this is perfect storm culture
Yep.
worship.
And yeah, and just an appeal to chill the fuck out to everybody, because the stuff
Well,
that happens online spills out into elementary schools near you.
well, and I thought, but the more you're online, getting exposed to the most extreme elements of the other side, the more
Yeah.
you are going to be prone to radicalize yourself.
Yep. No, you have to you almost, if you spend any time online, you have to be consciously aware of that and de-radicalize yourself as best you
Yes.
can.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of children, I got to go take mine to the hockey rink. We have some budget stuff coming in. I'm going to propose that I can write the Nashville blurb. I can write the lawsuit blurb, and I can write a quick budget blurb. Do you want to handle CBC, Danielle Smith?
CC Smith, and I'll do the hand-on stuff.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
I can also do the Nashville if you want.
Well, you know what? Let's just email it and figure out what we're going to do, because I don't know
Okay.
how much budget stuff we have coming in.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be huge. I don't think we're going to
Okay.
have a huge amount on budget, but
Well, fun to be back. What a wild week in the news. The
Yeah.
funny thing is, too, I spent all week getting caught up on my email from last week, and I finally finished today. So as of next week, I'll actually know what's happening.
And meanwhile, I, on the other hand, have been totally screwed because it's been spring break and my
Spring break
husband's
for your
traveling.
kids.
So I've been
Yeah.
boned.
Well, we'll be
Not
back
in a fun way.
We'll be back full power next week. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Good to have you back here on the podcast.